On the stand right now is a sound engineer, Keenan Wyatt. This is expected to be the last witness before Johnny Depp's turn. Let's go back in live.
To the set of Pirates 5 in Australia, what, if any, interactions did you observe between Mr. Depp and Mr. Daly?
Sean had come to set one day and sat and talked with Johnny for a while, and they talked about collaborating and doing some stuff in the future.
Was it a friendly conversation?
Absolutely, yes.
Has Mr. Depp ever worn an earpiece in any of the many movies in which you've worked with him?
Yes.
For what purpose are earpieces generally used by actors on sets?
Well, I've worked
Objection,
with...
Your Honor. First of all, relevance, foundation.
What's the relevance?
Hearsay.
May we approach, Your Honor?
Okay, sure.
All right, while they do that sidebar, still with me, law professor at University of Georgia and former prosecutor Melissa Redmond in Atlanta and criminal defense attorney Jesse Lull in Atlanta. Jesse, let me hear from you how you think this witness is faring so far. We haven't heard much from him, but he's a longtime friend of the defendant, worked with him for 25 years, and is talking about Pirates of the Caribbean 5. He says that was suspended because of the arguing between Heard and Depp.
Well, I think the witness is doing just fine. He's very credible. He's very professional looking, and he comes across really strong. Of course, the entire direct examination is being hiccuped by the continuous objections. And I think that's what the sidebar is about, is to control this onslaught of objections from the defense.
All right, looks like they are back from that sidebar. Let's go back in.
That's okay, I'll allow it.
Yes, he has.
When was the first time you used an earpiece with Mr. Depp?
First time we used it was on a movie he was directing called The Brave. We were doing a scene with Marlon Brando, who wears an earpiece for receiving his dialogue.
Objection.
I'll allow it. That's fine. Go ahead.
Marlon uses an earpiece for his dialogue, and it was a long shooting day, and we let Johnny, as the director, let Marlon go after we shot Marlon's section of the film, and then for Johnny's character to act against something other than just a blank nothing, we put Marlon's performance in an earpiece into Johnny so he could act up against Marlon's performance.
Did Mr. Depp ever use an earpiece for some other purpose other than listening to Mr. Brando's dialogue?
After that, we started using an earpiece all the time where Johnny would listen to music while acting. We would play all different kinds of music depending on the character he was playing. He and I would talk about it beforehand, and sometimes it'd be classical, sometimes it'd be rock, sometimes it would be blues. It depended on the character.
To what extent, if any, did you and Mr. Depp use that process in other movies on which you worked together?
We used that on every movie.
Mr. Wyatt, on those occasions, in addition to feeding Mr. Depp music, did you ever read lines to him?
Yes.
Why did you read lines to Mr. Depp?
Johnny typically likes to go into makeup in the morning and write his own dialogue and rewrite his dialogue. So sometimes there's not enough time to always to remember the lines and learn them. So I would remind him in his ear sometimes while music was playing at the same time.
And Mr. Wyatt, in your long experience working with Mr. Depp on films, how would you describe his level of preparedness on the set?
He's absolutely prepared. He knows what he wants the character to be. He collaborates with the director on what his ideas are, but he always comes very prepared.
And Mr. Wyatt, during your long relationship with Mr. Depp, what, if any, opportunity have you had to observe his sense of humor?
Quite often.
How would you describe to the jury Mr. Depp's sense of humor?
He likes like a British humor. He's sometimes a little dark, maybe. He likes plays on words, that sort of thing.
Monty Python?
Monty Python, there's a show in England called The Fast Show, which he used to love watching.
Mr. Wyatt, what, if any, relationship do you have with Mr. Depp outside of your working relationship?
We're close. I used to, after a film, sometimes he'd call and I would go on vacation with he and his family.
On what occasions would you go on vacation with Mr. Depp and his family?
He would call after a film, and he would be going away with the kids and Vanessa, and he would say, "Hey, we're going to the island. Would you come with me?" and stuff. Or, "We're going to France. Would you come along?" And sure, why not?
Would you please give the jury Vanessa's full name?
Vanessa Paradis.
And would you please tell the jury who she is?
She is the mother of Johnny's 2 kids, Jack and Lily Rose.
And Mr. Wyatt, on how many occasions, if you can recall, did you accompany Mr. Depp, Ms. Paradis, and Johnny's 2 children on vacation?
Several times.
On those several occasions where you accompanied them on vacation, did you ever observe Mr. Depp and Vanessa interact with each other?
Sure, yes.
Would you please tell the jury what you observed?
They were a loving couple, and everything was fine. Yeah, it was a family.
Did you ever hear or see Mr. Depp yell or raise his voice at Vanessa Paradis, the mother of his children?
Not that I recall.
Did you ever, on any occasion, see Mr. Depp physically abuse Vanessa?
Never.
And I believe you testified, Mr. Wyatt, that Mr. Depp's and Ms. Paradis' children, Lily Rose and Jack, were there on those vacations. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did you have occasion to observe Mr. Depp's interactions with his children?
Sure, yes.
Would you please describe for the jury very briefly Mr. Depp's interactions with his children, Jack and Lily Rose?
He was a very loving father. He used to do stuff with the kids all the time, going swimming at the island and teaching them scuba diving and, just drawing, a lot of drawing, doing artwork.
Did he ever yell or raise his voice at his children?
Not that I recall. Nothing that stands out, no.
Mr. Wyatt, on what, if any, occasions have you seen Mr. Depp drink alcohol?
Oh, we'd drink alcohol quite often.
And on those occasions in which you had alcohol with Mr. Depp, how, if at all, did his behavior change?
I don't remember it changing at all. I don't remember him changing.
It didn't make him angry?
No. Sleepy.
Have you ever seen Mr. Depp use drugs?
I've seen him take pills. Don't know what they were. I wouldn't know what they were, but that's all.
Based on your observations, when you have seen him taking pills, how, if at all, did the taking of pills affect his behavior?
I didn't see any change in Johnny. I don't recall anything changing.
Mr. Wyatt, do you know the defendant in this case, Ms. Amber Heard?
Yes.
When did you first meet Ms. Heard?
On the set of Rum Diary.
On how many occasions, if at all, did you see Ms. Heard after that?
Several times.
Would you please describe for the jury very briefly your relationship with Ms. Heard after you saw her the first few times?
I mean, I don't really have a relationship with her. We didn't sit and talk. I didn't hang out with her or anything like that.
Did there come a time when you became aware that Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard were romantically involved?
Yes. How
often did you see Mr. Depp after he started the romantic relationship with Ms. Heard?
Oh, I don't recall. I didn't see him that often, but I don't recall how often, but I didn't see him that much.
How often were you together, strike that, how often did you interact with Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard when the two of them were together?
Just only occasionally did I see him. I mean, I would leave him alone, let him have his time with Amber. I wasn't into interfering.
And on those occasions where you interacted with Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard as a couple, did you ever hear Mr. Depp yell at or raise his voice to Ms. Heard?
No.
On what occasions, if any, did he ever raise his hand to or otherwise abuse Ms. Heard?
I've never seen him be violent towards anybody.
And if we could, did there come a, switch gears here, did there come a time in May 2014 when you traveled with Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard by private plane from Boston to Los Angeles?
Yes.
Who else was on that Boston plane flight?
It was Amber and Johnny, Stephen, Savannah, and Jerry Judge and myself.
And would you please tell the jury who is Stephen?
Stephen Duders is Johnny's assistant.
Who is Savannah?
Savannah was Amber's assistant.
And I think the jury has heard the name Jerry Judge, but if you could please explain to the jury again who Jerry Judge is.
Jerry Judge is Johnny's security.
Mr. Wyatt, why were you on that flight that night?
I don't know the exact circumstances of that flight. I didn't travel with the two of them that often. I was probably headed back to Los Angeles to see my daughter.
And before you got on the flight, how did you arrive at the airport that night?
We came in a car.
When you say you came in the car, with whom did you come in the car?
It was Jerry, Stephen, Nathan, Johnny, and myself.
And who is Nathan?
Nathan.
We are approaching the top of the hour, so we have to take a break, but we will get you right back into the courtroom after this. Our thanks to our guest, Melissa Redmond, for your legal insight these last 2 hours. Keep it right here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice. Court TV Live, I'm Julia Janae in for Ted Rollins this morning. We could be just moments away from the biggest testimony in the defamation civil lawsuit between actor Johnny Depp and his ex-wife Amber Heard. Depp is expected to take the stand next after the witness who's on right now. Court TV cameras will be live for it all from that Fairfax, Virginia courtroom. On the stand right now is Keenan Wyatt. He's a sound technician who knew Depp for 25 years. Let's get you back in live.
Other people, go ahead.
What, if anything, did you observe about Ms. Heard's demeanor at the ceremony?
She was very happy-go-lucky. She was all dressed up. All of her friends were nicely dressed up and ready for a wedding.
Have you ever, in the course of your interactions with Ms. Heard, ever seen any marks, injuries, or bruises on her?
I have not, no.
During the decades that you have known Mr. Depp, to what extent, if any, are you aware of any woman other than Ms. Heard accusing him of abuse?
No, I'll allow it.
I've never seen Johnny abuse anybody, ever.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wyatt. That's all I have right now.
Why don't we go ahead and take our break? All right, let's go ahead and take our morning break for 15 minutes. Do not say anything, do not talk to me about the case, and don't look up anything. If a juror needs to address something to me, please write it down and give it to the deputy, okay? All right, thank you. You're excused. 15 minutes.
The court is on their morning break, and we are expecting Johnny Depp to take the stand once we're on the other side of that break, if nothing has changed as far as what we have learned from our sources there in Fairfax, Virginia. Let's talk about all of this with criminal defense attorney Jesse Lull in Atlanta. Still with me, Jesse. Thanks for being on. Let's talk about this witness. There's so many things I want to talk about, not only this witness, but the one before as well. But starting with recency, Keenan Wyatt, tell me about what you think of his testimony and how he was actually able to seemingly humanize Johnny Depp in a lot of his testimony.
Well, the whole point of Johnny's case in chief is to establish that he is not an abuser. He's a mild-mannered, loving father, individual who has a character role to play in his many movies. And Keenan comes across as a very regular, nice guy, mild-mannered, and clearly his relationship with Johnny tries to portray Johnny is exactly the type of person that he wants to be friends with. You know, someone who is a stand-up guy, a loving father, a good pal, someone that he can hang out with, go on vacation, family vacations with him, and interact with his family in a very loving and amiable way. And I think Keenan has established a very strong foundation for Johnny's testimony when he takes a stand.
You're so right. He wasn't on the stand very long, but just everything about his demeanor said that he was that kind of way, and him being friends with Johnny Depp, he wouldn't have seemingly put up with a friend who would have been someone who was an abuser or not loving to their family. There was a moment where he said he was on a plane with Amber Heard, and he noticed some of the back and forth between Depp and Heard, and that he went over to her to try and console her, to try and see if everything was okay, and then she said, "How dare you talk to me?" It was very loud and seemingly rude. What did you make about that exchange? Is it just a friend? Actually, let's first take a look at that clip and let's talk about it on the other side, Jesse.
Okay.
What, if anything, did you observe about Ms. Heard's behavior on that Boston flight?
Well, she was giving Johnny the cold shoulder, being quiet, and seemed pouty.
What, if any, conversation did you have with Ms. Heard on the flight?
At one point, I went up to her and said something to the effect of, he cares about you. And all of a sudden, she snapped and started yelling at me, "How dare you talk to me? Get away from me." So I went back to a seat and minded my own business.
When she said those things to you, would you describe the tone of her voice if you remember it?
She was abruptly loud. It was a quiet plane. All of a sudden, it got very loud.
And I believe you testified you went back to your seat.
He says she snapped, Jesse. What do you make of that? And is it credible with this being someone who is a 25-year friend of Johnny Depp?
Well, that was very important testimony for the reason that he's there for the plaintiff's case. He's there to let the jury know and have them compare Johnny Depp's relationship with his prior girlfriend and mother of his children, where he was very loving, was a very peaceful, and apparently she was a lovely woman that he enjoyed being with and taking his family to vacation with her and with Johnny. And now he's dealing with a new woman in Johnny's life, and she is spoiled, she's petulant, she's self-indulgent, according to his portrayal of this woman, and doesn't put her in very favorable light in terms of how of the women in Johnny's lives.
I saw some slight shaking of the head from Amber Heard during a lot of the testimony today, some moments of disapproval. Let's talk about the other witness on the stand today, Sean Betts. He was back on the stand, the head of security for Depp, also someone who's known him a very long time, worked for him for 15 years. I definitely got a different sense from him in terms of his demeanor, but what was your impression of Betts on the stand?
He's the head of security, and a lot of these celebrities get people who have prior military combat background, and he came across as like that. He came across as, G.I. Joe who's gone pro. And he's in his suit and tie, and he's very, very precise about his testimony, very precise about what his job is. And as you saw the cross, the first thing they did out of the barn door was to question his bias and his credibility. He's going to testify in favor of the man who pays, gives him his paycheck. But at the same time, he was very concise about his testimony, and he wouldn't let the defense attorney take him down the path about, are you sure about your statements to Johnny Depp about preventing the police from coming to a particular incident? Are you sure you've never seen him eat pills? Are you sure you've never seen him get very drunk and disorderly? He was very, very matter of fact. And it didn't faze him a bit when they tried to impeach him with those text messages. So, very strong witness for Johnny. That's what my impression is.
He absolutely was not fazed, and you're right, that law enforcement background definitely comes through with witnesses on the stand. But I didn't think that he came off like a detective or a cop or someone who was there just doing the facts of a case, especially when he was confronted with those text messages. I wrote one of them down where he was texting Depp saying, "I prevented them from calling Popo, glad you had fun," talking about a drunken night that Johnny Depp had. How problematic is that, where you have a head of security for the celebrity saying, "I stopped someone," which is a crime, by the way, from calling 911?
You know, I really, it could, some jurors may look at it as, you know, the privilege of being a celebrity and you have this, but on the other hand, it may have been a situation, we don't know who was restrained, who was refrained, you know, what was the context of the situation where Mr. Betts had to prevent the police from being involved. You know, did he just tell someone, "Hey, you know what, don't worry about it, I got it under control, I'll take care of the situation, you know, don't worry about it, it's all under control"? Is that what he said? Or did he stop someone and slide them a little money under the table and say, you know, "Look guys, I've got it, don't get the police involved"? You know, it's the context of that particular information, and we just don't have enough information to see in what manner did he stop the police, and will a jury think of that as just saying, you know, that he's just doing his job to protect his boss?
Absolutely. There could be a lot more to that story, but what the attorneys wanted to get out in that impeachment is that this is the lengths that will be done by these people who are around Johnny Depp, and also showing that he had these drunken nights and that he had no problem telling his head of security, "We drank a lot and we had a lot of fun." Jesse, thanks so much for your insight on this. Please stick around.